A few weeks ago, Somaliland and Ethiopia signed a memorandum of understanding that grants Ethiopia an access to the Red Sea, as well as the recognition of Somaliland. Is it the right decision for Somaliland to reach a naval peace agreement with Ethiopia? Is Ethiopia economically capable of meeting the financial obligations that are expected to be associated with the lease? What are the benefits and risks of this MOU? In this interview, I'm joined by Dr. Ahmed Zaki, a political analyst in Hargeisa. Ahmed, welcome to CBN.
Thank you for having me.
It's our great pleasure to have you here. On 1st January 2024, the leaders of Somaliland and Ethiopia signed a memorandum of understanding in Addis Ababa. Both countries described it as a historic. First of all, I want to get your thoughts on this MOU.
As you know, that the beginning of this year, there was an official meeting that government of Somaliland got official invitation from the federal government of Ethiopia. Earlier, they have not declared any sort of very information period before their meeting. But after that press conference that President Musa Bihi Abdi and the Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed made, that was the first time that the Memorandum of Understanding came into the international media. As we heard from the first interview, that both sides, they were very, very committed to have that Memorandum of Understanding. By the way, we should have to understand in the beginning on this point, there is no still a binding agreement. It's just an understanding. And when the binding agreement come, that will come the details with the approval of the both parliament of Somaliland and Ethiopia. It will be a long discussion that both governments will go back to their representatives. They will discuss in a details, and finally it will come into the final point that the both countries will sign a mutual agreement, and that will become a treaty. Before we reach that, there was 2 points came in the first glimpse of the media, and the first point was that President Musa Bihi Abdi, he claimed in that particular press briefing that Somaliland will guarantee to Ethiopia a water access to the Red Sea, and they are going to lease 20 kilometers in the Somaliland coastal area. He didn't specifically clarify which area it will be, and on that same time, he at one point that Ethiopia in exchange, they will recognize Somaliland as an independent state, and that will be the first nation in the world which going to recognize after 30 years of Somaliland seeking for the independence. On the other hand, 30 years Ethiopia were seeking to reach a water access that they would manage by themselves. Either it's a mutual understanding between the Somaliland and Ethiopia, or any other country in the region, because they were trying to reach Eritrea, they tried to reach Sudan, and on Sudan it was very close to make the deal before the collapse of the central government of Sudan and the civil war broke out. And in Djibouti, they were trying for a long time to get their own ports that they can maintain for their own security or their commercial issues. But anyway, they didn't agree each other. Finally, Somaliland was the last option that they had, as he have already explained in his first public appearance after the Memorandum of Understanding, Abiy Ahmed. And this is where you can see there is an issue, a pressing issue that's behind the Memorandum of Understanding that both countries is still yet to declare. So we will see, it will come out by the coming weeks. It will fall out that what was the pressing issues. But as per analysis of strategic location of the Somaliland and geopolitical tension in the Red Sea, that we can understand there are international interests which came into the Red Sea that forced both countries to have a memorandum of understanding in this particular period of time.
Do you think it is the right decision for Somaliland to reach a naval peace agreement with Ethiopia currently?
Currently, Somaliland. It's in one way, it's a diplomatic win for Somaliland. The major interest of Somaliland, since its declaration of separation from Somalia as an independent state, the only thing that every government of Somaliland was trying to reach was the recognition of Somaliland in international arena. And there was no one country gave even a promise to Somaliland that we are going to think about, or we are going to discuss with you the formalization of our relationship into a diplomatic and recognition level. So this is a breakthrough for Somaliland, is seeking international recognition. So it's very good point for the Somaliland government and generally for the Somaliland people.
Okay, and can you provide more details on the advantages that Somaliland stands to gain from this deal, starting with the recognition?
Recognition of one state is the beginning of your recognition of multiple states. We don't want like the Somaliland to be like a Palestine. It have been recognized by a lot of nations, but they still didn't secure a recognition from a Security Council, and still Palestine is not a sovereign nation. That you can see that they are facing a lot of state problems or security issues from Israel. On the other hand, we don't want to remain unrecognized as a Somaliland. Somaliland Somaliland was seeking for the last 30 days. The benefits are starting from the understanding from the central of the African Union, where the Addis Ababa recognition will motivate a lot of African nations to follow the suit of Ethiopia to recognize Somaliland. That will be the first gate of an African recognition. If a few African countries follow the suit, there will be a lot of interesting nations from the Middle East to the European countries who are going to ready to recognize Somaliland as an independent state. And if we win one of the 5 major powers in the Security Council to recognize Somaliland, that will be the first major recognition as a full state in Somaliland. On the other hand, they will get a benefit of encouraging that they will get a lot of encouragement to maximize their diplomatic efforts to reach a lot of countries, to make them understand that Somaliland is not a threat to any African country or even into the international society. They just want to get their own rights to enjoy what any other nation in the world have today as a recognized country. On the other hand, Somalia, they might face a lot of diplomatic pressure from the neighboring countries, that any country who want to recognize Somaliland will have that if they have a clash of interest like Kenya, that will be the first country or the next country after Ethiopia is going to recognize the Somaliland. On the other hand, Somali government, they are feeling they want to have Somaliland as an hostage. You have to understand that point. They want to have Somaliland as an hostage country, that they don't want to give their rights, even if they remain as a union, and they don't want to let them go to manage their affairs and to deal with the rest of the world. For the last 12 years, since 2012 to 2024, the negotiation between Somaliland and Somalia was continuously like coming and going, and there was no proper improvement that we can say that Somaliland and Somalia agreed even one point that have been implemented. So 12 years is good time that you can give to someone to make an understanding, if there is a goodwill, if there is a good intentions. But when you see the government, federal government of Somalia, they are manipulating to have Somalians in hostage, not allowing them to have their own rights to deal with the rest of the world. Somaliland is not an enemy of anyone. They are not an enemy of Somalia, and they are not an enemy of Djibouti. They are not enemy of Yemen or Ethiopia. They have very good friendship relations with every country, and they are trying to have just manage their home. They would just want to manage their own life, and that is where they are trying to reach for the last 10 years. And if they make this progressive diplomatic point, that is absolutely a good point for Somalia.
Regarding recognition, although Ethiopia has not explicitly committed to recognizing Somaliland, stating an in-depth assessment, but Somaliland officials say the recognition is part of the agreement. Are both parts aligned on this issue?
When you see that, still, that's what I was telling you, the memorandum of understanding which both parties have signed in front of the media have not yet been published, both from Somaliland side and from the Ethiopian side. We are commenting only what both officials have said. Let us start with the first press release that they have released it together, President Bihi and Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed. Both, while he was sitting next to him, President Bihi said that it's part of the agreement that Ethiopia will recognize. And at the same time, he didn't deny it. And on contrary on that, he was clapping for that point of Somaliland president made in public. So if there is no rejection, and if there is no contradiction, still we will consider that it's still part of that agreement officially. When the official document is released, we will see how the Ethiopian government and Somaliland government will analyze into their parliament, and their and debate will come out in detail. That's when we are going to see that how much cost that Somaliland should have to pay to get recognition, and how much Ethiopia is willing to go to get a board, whether it's a lease agreement between Somaliland and Ethiopia, or whether it's an exchange of a shares that they have later on said that it's a part of a share that Somaliland is going to get from the successful airplane carrier of Ethiopian Airline. But anyway, the actual decision will be made by the Parliament of Somaliland and by the Parliament of Ethiopia. And that will be like publicly shared documents. There will be a lot of debates inside both countries, and later on it will come into a proper agreement. Otherwise, it will remain just a memorandum of understanding, and it's the beginning of the official engagement between the both sides. And you can see that a lot of officials from Somaliland are visiting Addis Ababa. In contrary, we are expecting a lot of officials came from Addis Ababa to Hargeisa. So that is how they are making a ground reality for the actual agreement.
Ethiopia has chosen Somaliland as its gateway to sea access, despite other countries, coastal countries in the region like Djibouti, Kenya, Sudan and Eritrea. Why Somaliland? What factors influenced this decision?
As we have explained in the beginning of our program, that I have said that Ethiopia reached first Eritrea, and that you have seen since Abiy Ahmed came, he tried to resolve the long-term conflict between Ethiopia and Eritrea, and because of that he won the Nobel Peace Prize. Unfortunately, from the Eritrean side, there was no progress after the agreement. They want to make a proper agreement and to use, because it's very close to their industrial area of Ethiopia, they are first preferring the Eritrea. Unfortunately, that didn't happen, and the civil war of Ethiopia broke out, where Tigray region started civil war against the federal government of Ethiopia. That was the first setback of the Abiy Ahmed's ambition to reach a Red Sea through Eritrea. On the other hand, Djibouti is extremely costly for him. They are already hosting a lot of military bases beginning from France, China, America, and multiple other countries are having already military base in Djibouti. And despite of that heavy amount which they are giving to the Djibouti is not willing to give a very cheap. They are not offering a cheap rental space for Ethiopia, which is making it more economically not applicable to the economically not viable for them. So on that particular point of issue that you can see from Ethiopia, they have left it only two options. One is Sudan, and the other one is Somaliland. Let us go for the first one. They have very good approach to Sudan. There was a uprising in Sudan. The government of Omar Hassan al-Bashir have been collapsed. The civilian government came. Then there was a military coup again came. Then the civil war came. And all that particular period of time before the civil war started, Ethiopia was trying to reach out in Sudan. But finally they failed to get, because the country completely got destabilized. Now the only option remained for Ethiopia is Somaliland. And Somaliland and Ethiopia, they were having a long time relationship. It was not up to high level diplomatic relations, but still Ethiopia maintains their consulate in Hargeisa, while Somaliland have a mission office in Addis Ababa. That we know all that. And through that, there was a negotiation was going on, like track 2 diplomacy was going on for a long time, and later on it came with the incidents of the Red Sea. That increases the Red Sea instability. When early November started Houthis to attack ships in the Red Sea, that they want to block Israeli ships to cross that region. That gives an alert for the Western powers, and it seems that they are pushing this agreement between Somaliland and Ethiopia behind the doors, and it will come out very soon. So as I have explained in my other interviews, that it's the only naval army which is ready to use against the Houthis, an Ethiopian Navy army, but they don't have any space to fight for that. And I think this is the main reason that behind the Ethiopian and Somaliland agreement.
Some argue that leasing 20 kilometers of sea is substantial. In your evaluation, do you believe it is fair for Somaliland to lease this extent of its coastline to Ethiopia?
When you see that 20 kilometers, it's enough space that like any military base can use it, but depends how much cost that we are going to take from Ethiopia, because it's a lease. And on the other hand, what will be the content of the defense agreement between Somaliland and Ethiopia? Ethiopia is not the first country who's going to seek outside military base outside of their country. There are a lot of countries who have military bases outside of their country. But why Ethiopia need at this time, in this moment, when they have already a civil war at their home, their economy is fragile, and still they are trying to build a navy army in the Red Sea? That have a question is to be asked by the Somaliland politicians and to debate in the parliament. And that's needs an intention that Somaliland politicians and Somaliland representatives should have to sit seriously, discuss it, and they should have to make a counterpart of that it should not affect their security, basic security of Somaliland.
You have mentioned it, the cost.
Mm-hmm.
Is Ethiopia economically capable of meeting the financial obligations that are expected to be associated with the lease?
Unless there is a third party, Ethiopia currently has not a capability of economic to invest that. So the third party will come out very soon. That's where I said that there is an international intervention on this agreement.
While we have discussed the benefits, are there any potential risks that Somaliland should be cautious about?
Exactly. There are Ethiopia and Somaliland. They were neighbors for the last 30 years. There was no a military conflict between Somaliland and Ethiopia. There was a lot of economic conflicts between the two countries came, but they always resolved it through a diplomatic channels. And we have seen that multiple times Somaliland have stopped the cat coming from Ethiopia, and Ethiopia sometimes they block the social intermingling between the both sides of Somaliland and Somali region in Ethiopia. And later on they have a mutual understanding which make it their economic intermingle between the Ethiopia and Somaliland very easy. But yes, there are a concern of the security issue related to your neighboring country, which can switch their interests at any time and can put risk on your security. So Somaliland should have to think another strategy which they can counterpart with that, because there is no opportunity without risk. So you have to understand, high risk, high return. That is, everybody knows. There is nothing without risk. So Ethiopia will not be able to engage in negative activities or animosity activities against the Somaliland, even for the coming 15 years, because they should have to have animosity starts evolutionary way. It don't come like accidental, that today I'm going to attack one country because they go against me. It's not happen like that. The neighboring countries conflict comes through time. So Somaliland and Ethiopia, they are proof their relationship was peaceful for a long time. So in case Somaliland should have to keep in their mind their security and their sovereignty is the first part of their interest. So to secure your own interest, you should have to think the counterpart of that. So you can give another country a military base which have a more powerful than Ethiopia, like America or Britain or maybe even China, to invite them, to convince them that they should have to get a military base in Somaliland, where they are very close to Ethiopian military base, so that in case of anyone goes against the Somaliland, the other party can stand for them.
Given the opposition from Somalia and international support for Somalia's sovereignty, how might diplomatic challenges impact the agreement between Somaliland and Ethiopia?
Somalia, they have a legitimate right as long as Somaliland have not been recognized yet. So in international community, still considered as an autonomous region of Somalia. And that's where Somaliland is trying to get an independent recognition state that is not having any sort of political or diplomatic affairs with Somalia. So Somalia will always try to sustain their position of sovereignty, integrity, and unity of Somalia and Somaliland. That is a natural thing that every politician or every diplomat or even every scholar can expect from Somalia. The reality comes into the fact on the ground, that whether Somalia is able to influence Somaliland to change their decisions. They have no influence at all. Somalia cannot have any influence with Hargeisa or the government of Somaliland to change their diplomatic course. And do the Somalia have an influence on Ethiopia, whether it's a military influence or whether even it's an economic influence? And I don't see any sort of like influence that they have. Yes, they will put a lot of pressure through the Arab League. They will put a lot of pressure through African Union. They will put a lot of pressure through UN organizations. But Somalia should have to make sure that they have strong allies who can have influence on Ethiopia, and still there is none. There is no country which have direct influence in Ethiopia that Somalia have very good friendship or have an interest with them. The only country which can come like to have the side of Somalia in terms of a military conflict currently, it seems Turkey. And I don't think Turkey is going to involve any sort of conflict outside of their country.
In conclusion, what advice would you offer to the Somaliland government concerning the MOU?
Somaliland government should have to have the trust of their people first, because first comes first. Somaliland government should have a clear communication through their public. They should not wait until the other people is going to tell information which disturbs their own people. So it's the first responsibility of the office of the Foreign Office of Somaliland to clearly have a press release related to this issue, giving a detailed information to their own people and the steps which are going to expect to be taken. Take, for example, they should have to tell that we are going to make a ground reality for that. The memorandum of understanding consists of that points. Some of the points will remain secret until we are going to make it clarification, so that their own people should have to have actual sources, especially their media, the local media of Somaliland. If you did not give any information to your own people, they will seek information from your enemy. That is going to create a clash between the government and their own people. Number one. And number two, Somaliland should have to open a debate in the parliament and in the intellectual society and shareholders, stakeholders of the state, and it should have to be an open debate, an honest debate, that what's the benefits that we are going to get of this agreement, and what are the stakes that we are going to sacrifice for this agreement. And that should have to remain logic and honesty. And the only thing that we can get a positive response from the public is that we should have to communicate to your own people through your own journalists. Don't wait until the other people is going to tell your people what they should have to think about their government.
Thank you for your comments. And we are very great pleasure to have you here, Dr. Ahmed.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for watching. My name is Hamse Daabjeerin. Till next time, have a nice time.